Hey everybody, it's your old pal TJ here with a new edition of Custom Conquest Showcase. Thank you for joining me. You know I can't resist me a good Smash alternate, and with the recently announced Pikmin 3 Deluxe for Nintendo Switch, my appetite for a juicy custom amiibo has been reinvigorated. On display for today is my version of Olimar's Super Smash Ultimate Alt, Alph. Captain Olimar, as you know, stars in the first two Pikmin titles originally released on the GameCube. As for Alph, he made his Pikmin debut in the Wii U follow-up Pikmin 3. In Super Smash Bros. For Wii U and 3DS, Alph was added as an alternate version of Olimar, featuring identical gameplay, and this carried over into Ultimate as well. But unlike his Pikmin-plucking predecessor, Alph did not receive the amiibo treatment. Now all you Conquestadors at home know I'm not one to shy away from a good Smash alt, but I'll admit I was not overly eager to tackle this one in particular. There are at least a couple obvious obstacles that had me halting with hesitation. So how did I break through the barrier? Let's take a look. In Smash for Wii U and 3DS, Alph's art very closely resembles his default character counterpart, Olimar. The same can be said for the Ultimate art. But in the interest of making Alph, well, more interesting, I chose the Ultimate route. And while I typically attempt to reproduce the source material to the best of my ability, for this outing I opted to make a few minor alterations that I felt would help to represent the full spectrum of the Pikmin series as it appears in Smash. Both Olimar and Alph's key art features the series' real stars, the Pikmin. Well, 3 of them at least. The red, blue, and yellow variety. Those familiar with Olimar and Alph in Smash know that 3 other Pikmin types feature in their movesets. The powerful purple Pikmin, the white poison Pikmin, and the winged pink Pikmin. So rather than repeat our primary colored Pikmin trio for my custom Alph amiibo, I preferred to replace them with the white, purple, and pink variations. So from a customizing standpoint, that meant in addition to adjusting the Olimar figure into Alph, I also needed to alter his 3 Pikmin pals. Conveniently, I didn't have to construct them all from scratch. I pilfered the pink Pikmin from the Pikmin amiibo that released alongside Hey Pikmin for the 3DS. Since it was fixed to the center object, a little patch and paint was required, but an otherwise easy solution. And fortunately, this little Pikmin was already in full bloom, so it's poised to perfectly replace the yellow one. Being the only winged Pikmin of the bunch, I wanted to display it mid-flight, but I didn't exactly like the idea of it clinging to Alph, so I felt a subtle support was in order. For this, I turned to the most discreet support in the entire collection of amiibo. Obviously, that honor goes to none other than Smash Link's yellow pea stand. That, my friends, is just a little joke. I actually got it from the Smash series Rosalina, or more specifically, Luma. For the purple Pikmin, I used a World of Nintendo Jack-specific 2.5-inch scale purple Pikmin figure. This hulking fellow is in a pretty static standing position, and I didn't feel it stylistically meshed with the rest of the composition. So to integrate it more naturally, I decided to adjust him into a sitting position by simply removing his legs with an X-acto Knife and reattaching them into something that resembled a sitting posture. The Jack's purple Pikmin is in his base leaf stage, but I wanted the purple Pikmin to replace the blue one, so I pruned off the purple's leaf and replaced it with blue's bud. Unlike the original trio, purple's petals are more pinkish, so I did need to brush up the bud a bit. Since the poison Pikmin wasn't featured as part of the Hey Pikmin amiibo, and to my knowledge there's no existing appropriately scaled figure like the Jack-specific line, so for this one I had to be a bit more creative. The white Pikmin doesn't have ears like the yellow one, nor a nose like the red one, so the most suitable base was clearly blue. The only real differentiating features other than their color is that the blue one has a mouth, and the white one has these big buggy eyes. So I patched up the mouth and used a hole puncher on a plastic spork to fashion a pair of perfectly symmetrical peepers. My blue Pikmin was already without a bud since I snipped it for the purple Pikmin, and since the white Pikmin would be standing in for red, I removed red's leaf and superglued it to the top of the white one. I also adjusted the placement of the blue Pikmin's right arm cause I thought it looked better. Since the key art depicts the red Pikmin mid-pluck, I clipped off the white Pikmin's lower half and glued them to some leftover rubble from a random Skylander Earth figure. For Alph himself, or his body at least, I initially intended to adjust the Olimar amiibo into shape, but I quickly realized the 2.5-inch Jack-specific Olimar from the World of Nintendo line was already in a much closer position to what I was ultimately aiming for, as well as being slightly smaller, which really came in handy as the base was quickly becoming quite crowded. The Jack-specific Olimar figure sports articulated arms, so I adjusted them to the appropriate angle, and I also removed the gloves so that I could position them in their most plucky pose. The head, as you might imagine, or helmet rather, presented the most challenging obstacle to overcome for this project. First of all, I needed to find a way in there. Boiling water oftentimes enhances the figure's flexibility, or at least loosens the glue a little. It certainly didn't seem to be the case where this clear space helmet was concerned. Actually, breaking my way into it wouldn't be difficult at all. Problem is, I want to preserve the integrity and clarity of the helmet so I can repurpose it for Alph. and I can't conceal any scuffs or scratches with paint or putty either, since it's completely transparent. There's the real challenge. What I finally settled on was a rotary tool with a super thin bit to precisely slice my way in. Then I sanded the sides with a super fine-grained sandpaper to clean up the edges. All in all, it came out pretty clean. A friend of mine and crazy talented customizer AKShop08 made a pretty sweet Alph herself way before I attempted to. I asked her how she managed to breach the helmet, and here's what she told me. Apparently, she wraps it in a towel, stands on it, and bounces up and down until it grants her access. Incredible. Turned out amazing for her, but I'm gonna level with you. I don't think I could have pulled it off. I knew I wouldn't be happy using Olimar's head as the foundation for Alph's, since Olimar's head is a flat oval, and Alph's is much more spherical. So I sculpted it out of Apoxie Sculpt, as well as his nose and eyes. But his ears came courtesy of Olimar, and his tuft on top is the bottom portion of Bowser Jr.'s ponytail. And let me tell you, it was a tight squeeze. I took advantage of every vertical millimeter, even going so far as to discreetly thin out the thickness of the plastic where the helmet connected back together at the top to accommodate the height of Alph's hair. The little antenna on top is Olimar's, but I flipped it backwards so that it curved towards the front. For the ball on the end, I removed Olimar's pink one and replaced it with a semi-transparent blue bead. At this point, I was armed with all the various components I needed. I just needed to paint them and coordinate them on the base. The pink one, as I mentioned, just needed some minor touch-ups. Initially, I hoped I could get away with not having to completely repaint the purple Pikmin, but that wound up not working out at all, since I had to conceal the area where I reattached its little legs and I couldn't quite achieve a perfect color match. So I just wound up repainting the whole thing. I used white spray paint for the poison Pikmin and coated its eyes red. I gave Alph's spacesuit an eggshell wash with his signature blue accents. I brushed his head with a flesh tone with a darker shade for his nose, blue for the hair with some lighter blue highlights, and I used a fine-tipped brown Sharpie to dot on his freckles. I doubted my ability to produce two perfect pupils with paint, so I popped out a pair from black electrical tape with my hole punch. No matter how I positioned Alph and the Pikmin, I found myself dissatisfied with the placement of Pinky. Eventually, I resolved that it needed to be positioned much higher than Luma's support could accommodate, so rather than overthink it, I decided to incorporate the Rock Pikmin to elevate the level of the clear support. Even though the Rock Pikmin doesn't play a part in Olimar or Alph's moveset, it's there in spirit. Literally. With everything in its place, all I had left to do was seal Alph's head back into the helmet. For some reason, I was really apprehensive. I knew I only had one chance, and once his head was sealed inside, there was no going back. I mustered my courage and applied a thin layer of Locktite on one side of the helmet. Ever so carefully, I fit the two halves back together. It was perfect. For about 2 seconds. Then, devastation! The fumes from the adhesive fogged up the helmet, mildly at first, but slowly and dramatically began corroding the crystal clear helmet I had taken such careful measures to protect. I was gutted. It was the single most inconvenient mistake I could possibly make. After walking away for a bit, venting on Twitter, and seeking advice, I set to correcting my devastating misstep. First, I needed to remove the corroded helmet without damaging any other part of the figure. That was tough. Next, I needed to locate a replacement helmet. I attempted to use the Jakks Pacific helmet, but it just didn't fit as well as the Olimar amiibo helmet. I began poking through my pile of parts when, lo and behold, I actually had another Olimar amiibo that I didn't even remember picking up. I wasn't about to look a gift horse in the mouth, so naturally I wrapped it in a towel and proceeded to jump up and down on it for all I was worth. Just kidding. I painstakingly repeated my exact extraction process from before, and after enough time, got back to the point where it was time to glue again. No part of me wanted to. I was really scared, and I knew this was my last shot. I got a lot of sound advice from fellow customizing friends. AK Shop recommended jewelry glue, which seems to have done the trick for her Alph custom. When my younger brother heard of my plight, he suggested JB Weld Clear Weld Quick Setting Epoxy, and he happened to have a brand new unopened tube with him. I wanted to test it on something else first, so I glued a few pieces of random plastic, but I couldn't really think of a way to recreate the conditions that would inform me of how it would react to my helmet. I figured if it didn't work, at least I could probably use it to bond back together the scattered remnants of my broken heart. Fortunately, I didn't have to test that out. It is with great joy and relief that I can now report the mission was a success. And with that, my custom Super Smash Bros. Alph amiibo was complete. You know, I gotta say, very oftentimes I find the most potent ingredients for attaining victory aren't always skills, brains, or luck, but persistence. A determination not to give up. Now I realize we're not exactly changing the world here, we're playing with toys. But I encourage you, no matter who you are, or what you're doing, if it's important to you, stick with it. You'll get there. On that note, thank you for sticking with me, and maybe we'll do this again sometime. Until then, this is TJ signing off. Thanks for playing.